Whispers of Love. Chapter 1. The Apartment on Willow Street. The rain had already started when Evelyn Hart arrived at the old brick building on Willow Street. It wasn't a heavy rain, just a quiet drizzle that seemed to hum softly against the pavement, like a heartbeat made of water. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, holding her keys, and watched how the lamplight shimmered across the puddles. She had always loved the sound of rain. It was predictable, forgiving, and endlessly patient. Unlike people. Unlike love. The apartment stood 3 stories high, its red bricks faded and uneven, its windows tall and old-fashioned, trimmed in white paint that had begun to peel. The building wasn't remarkable to anyone else, but to Evelyn, it felt like a pause in the noise of her life, a breath she had been needing for years. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of dust and cedar. The floorboards creaked like old memories. She dragged her suitcase inside, feeling the soft echo of her own footsteps. The silence felt heavy, but comforting, like someone had lived here long ago and left a piece of their soul behind. The apartment itself was small but warm. 2 rooms, a narrow kitchen, and a single window facing the street. The wallpaper was pale blue, faded in places. There was a faint outline where a painting had once hung. Evelyn ran her fingers over the wall, feeling the roughness beneath the paper. She whispered to herself, almost smiling, "Home." It was the first time she had said that word since she left Michael. 3 years together, and then one day silence. He had fallen in love with someone else, and Evelyn had packed her life into boxes, promising herself she wouldn't cry anymore. But she did. Every night. Until one day, the tears stopped coming, and all that remained was the sound of the rain. That was why she came here. To start over. To find quiet. That night, as the city softened under the storm, she sat by the window with a cup of tea and listened to the wind whistle faintly through the cracks in the glass. The rain tapped the windowsill in rhythm. Somewhere, a clock ticked, then a whisper. At first, she thought it was the pipes, or maybe the wind sliding between the walls. But the sound was too soft, too deliberate. A man's voice. It came so faintly she almost doubted she heard it at all, a breath carried by the rain. Clara. Evelyn froze. Her eyes scanned the room, but there was no one there. Just the dim light from her lamp and the soft rustle of curtains. She shook her head, laughed nervously, and told herself she was just tired. A new place, an old building. The wind playing tricks. But later, when she went to bed, she heard it again, closer this time. "Clara, my love." Evelyn sat up. The sound was coming from the wall behind her bed. She touched the plaster gently, feeling the coolness of it under her palm. For a moment, she thought she felt a faint vibration, like someone speaking from behind the surface. Her heart beat faster. The next morning, curiosity got the best of her. She examined the wall more closely. Near the corner, where the paint had peeled, there was a tiny crack. Just big enough for her to notice something metallic behind it, like a nail or a hinge. She fetched a small screwdriver from her suitcase and began to pry gently at the seam. The wall gave way easier than she expected, revealing a hollow space no bigger than a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in yellowed cloth, was a small stack of envelopes tied together with a ribbon. Letters. Evelyn held them carefully, afraid they might crumble. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was elegant, looping and precise. On the top envelope, in blue ink, were the words, "To my dearest Clara." Evelyn felt a chill run down her spine. The name, the whisper. She sat at the kitchen table, lit only by the gray light of morning, and began to read. The 4th of July, 1943. My dearest Clara, the world feels endless tonight. The air smells of smoke and salt, and every star above me looks like it's waiting for something. I don't know if I'll make it home this time, but I needed you to know every thought, every heartbeat, every dream I've ever had belongs to you. Sometimes I imagine you standing by the window, the way you used to when it rained, tracing the drops with your fingertips. I wonder if the rain still sounds the same there. I wonder if it still whispers the way it did when we said goodbye. I can almost hear your voice in it. Yours always, James. Evelyn exhaled slowly, her heart thudding. James, Clara, 1943. She placed the letter down, feeling her hands tremble. How long had these words been hidden here, 70? 80 years? Why had she of all people found them? As the rain began again outside, she felt something deep inside her stir. Not fear, something else. Recognition. She read another letter, then another. With each one, she felt more connected to this stranger from another time. His words were tender, poetic, full of longing and quiet devotion. He wrote as if the world was ending, and she could feel it. And then, as she reached the fifth letter, something strange happened. The lamp beside her flickered once, the air shifted, and in that fleeting second, she swore she heard him again. Not from the wall, not from outside, but right behind her ear, a whisper. Soft, warm, almost human. "You found them, didn't you?" Evelyn turned sharply, but there was no one there. Just the faint scent of old paper and the quiet hum of rain. She stood frozen, her breath trembling. And yet, despite the fear curling in her chest, she couldn't help but feel one impossible thing. She was not alone. Chapter 2. The Letters from James. The rain hadn't stopped since the night she found the letters. It fell in a steady, hypnotic rhythm, coating the windows in silver. The city outside blurred into shades of gray, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, the letters spread before her like sacred relics, the ribbon that once tied them now lying limp beside her teacup. There were 22 envelopes in total. 22 voices from the past, sealed in paper and ink. She ran her fingers over the top one. July 18th, 1943, the same year her grandmother had been born. She hesitated, then opened it carefully. The pages were thin, nearly transparent, and the ink had bled slightly from age. She began to read aloud, her voice low, trembling as if she were afraid of breaking something invisible in the air. The 18th of July, 1943. My beloved Clara, I write these words as the sea rocks our ship like a cradle. The men below deck sing old songs to keep the fear away. But their voices are ghosts before morning. Every night I dream of your hair, sunlight through the kitchen window, the way it used to fall over your eyes when you laughed. I remember how you used to scold me for staring. You said, "James, if you look at me like that, I'll never be able to breathe again." I think of that now and how right you were. Without you, I haven't taken a full breath in weeks. If the sea swallows me before I return, promise me one thing. My love, never forget that you were my last prayer. Yours always, James. The words struck something deep in her. Evelyn pressed her lips together, blinking back tears. James's voice, his longing, it was too vivid, too real. She could almost hear him speaking through the words, soft and low, like he was whispering them across the decades straight into her ear. She reached for another letter. The 2nd of August, 1943. Clara, the nights are colder now. I sleep with your photograph under my pillow. Sometimes, I wake thinking I hear your voice calling my name in that quiet way of yours. Last night, I saw you in a dream. You were standing at the window while it rained. You turned to me, and I swear, you said something. But I couldn't hear. The wind took your words away. I wonder if dreams can cross oceans. James. A soft knock startled her. Evelyn looked up sharply. The sound came from the wall, the same wall where she had found the letters. 3 slow knocks, then silence. She rose from the table, her heart pounding. The apartment was cold, colder than before. The air felt thick, almost humming. She stepped closer to the wall, running her hand along its surface. "Hello?" she whispered. No answer. Then faintly, through the plaster, a sigh. She stumbled back, nearly tripping over the chair. Her pulse thudded in her ears. For a long minute, she just stood there, breathing hard, trying to convince herself she was imagining it. But deep down, she knew what she had heard. It wasn't just the wind. It wasn't the pipes. It was him. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The letters called to her like an unfinished song. She lit a single candle and sat by the wall again, reading another page. The candlelight flickered over her face, and for a moment, her reflection in the window looked like someone else, a woman from another time. The 23rd of August, 1943. Clara, I don't know if my letters will ever reach you. The mail ships have stopped coming. Some of the men say it's too dangerous now. But I keep writing, because if I stop, I fear I'll forget the sound of your laughter. Do you remember the old willow tree by the lake? The one where we carved our initials that summer? I dreamt of it last night. The carving was still there, but someone else was standing beneath it. She looked like you, Clara. But when she turned, it wasn't you. Evelyn's hands trembled. The letter slipped slightly, brushing the flame of the candle, and in an instant, the light flared, then went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the sound of rain and her heartbeat remained. She tried to relight the candle, but her hands were shaking too much. And then, a voice. Not loud, not clear, but near. Evelyn. She froze. The letters fell from her lap. He had said her name. Not Clara. Evelyn. She turned slowly, the room barely visible in the stormlight leaking through the curtains. Her breath came shallow. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. The air grew colder still. A faint outline shimmered near the wall like fog taking the shape of a man. She could just make out the curve of shoulders, the faint glint of eyes in the dark. Her fear rose, but so did something else. A strange calm. "James?" she said. The shape didn't move. It just stood there, silent, as if waiting. And then, in the softest whisper, "You shouldn't have opened them." The shape vanished. The sound of rain returned, harder now, pounding against the glass. Evelyn backed away, her heart racing, her body trembling. But even through her fear, her eyes drifted to the letters on the table, dozens of them, all waiting, all alive. Some part of her knew. If she stopped reading, the whispers would never rest. If she kept reading, the truth would find her whether she was ready for it or not. She sank into her chair, picked up the next envelope, and whispered to the empty room, "All right, James, tell me everything." Outside, the storm grew wild, thunder echoing down Willow Street. And somewhere, in that storm, a man's voice murmured, back, tender, distant, and full of ache. "I've been waiting for you, Clara." But Evelyn didn't hear her name this time. She heard her heartbeat instead, and beneath it, a whisper that sounded almost like fate. Chapter 3. The Voice in the Rain. The rain returned that night, heavier, darker, more relentless than before. It slammed against the windows like it wanted in. Evelyn lay awake in bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. The clock read 2:47 a.m. The apartment was cold, the air sharp. She hadn't been able to sleep since hearing his voice, her name, spoken by someone who couldn't exist. The letters were still on the kitchen table, sealed now in a wooden box she found in the closet. She'd promised herself she wouldn't open it again, but she could still feel their presence, like a pulse under the floor. Every time the thunder rolled, the whispers stirred. At first, she thought she was imagining it echoes of her own fear. But then came the sound she couldn't explain. Soft, rhythmic tapping on the wall. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. It was the same pattern as before, only this time, it came with a whisper, a single, broken syllable that chilled her blood. "Eve." She sat up, heart pounding. "No," she whispered to herself. "No, you're not real." But even as she said it, she knew she didn't believe it. She climbed out of bed, her feet cold against the wooden floor, and walked to the kitchen. The storm outside flashed through the window, and for a split second, she saw her own reflection, pale, tired, wide-eyed, staring back at her like a stranger. The letters were calling. She reached for the box. Her hands hesitated over the lid. "Just one more," she murmured. The lid creaked open. Inside, the envelope seemed different. The ribbon that once tied them together was twisted tightly around one of them, as if someone, or something, had touched it. Evelyn's breath trembled. She pulled out the next letter, her fingers brushing the faint indent of handwriting that had waited 80 years to be read. The 12th of September, 1943. "My Clara, I don't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it, the whisper in the dark. It calls my name, but it doesn't sound like you. It's different. Softer. Sadder. I don't know what it means. Sometimes I wake, and I think I can feel someone near me, watching, breathing. Maybe I'm losing my mind. Maybe the sea has finally taken something from me. But if this reaches you, and if you still love me, please, promise me one thing. Don't listen when the rain speaks. James?" Evelyn felt her pulse in her throat. The words struck her like a blade made of recognition. Don't listen when the rain speaks. But she already had. A woman in a blue coat, holding a letter. A man running through the rain to reach her. The sound of her own heartbeat, but not in this lifetime. The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Evelyn gasped, clutching her chest. Tears welled in her eyes. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. But there was no answer, only the slow, gentle sound of someone breathing behind her. She turned and saw nothing. Just her apartment. Her empty apartment. The candle on the table flickered back to life on its own, the flame trembling like a heartbeat. On the wall above it, letters had appeared black, burned into the plaster. "I never left." Evelyn backed away until her shoulder hit the door. She wanted to run, to scream, but something in her, something she didn't understand, made her stay. Because deep inside, beneath the terror, was a strange and terrible thought. What if she had been Clara? What if this wasn't the first time she'd heard James's voice in the rain? Outside, thunder cracked, splitting the night in two, and somewhere, in the roar of the storm, James whispered her name again, softly, lovingly, endlessly. "Evelyn, come back to me." Chapter 4. Clara's silence. The rain stopped the next morning. For the first time in days, sunlight reached the windows of the apartment on Willow Street. It didn't feel like warmth, more like a ghost of it, thin and uncertain, the kind that passes through you without leaving a trace. Evelyn sat by the window with a cup of untouched coffee, staring out at the pale light and the drifting mist above the street. The world outside looked ordinary again. Cars hummed by. A woman walked her dog. A child laughed somewhere in the distance. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Her eyes moved to the wooden box on the table, the one that held the letters. It sat quietly, closed, as if nothing had ever happened. She hadn't opened it again since the night before. She hadn't needed to. The sound of James's whisper still lingered in her mind, soft as breath against the back of her neck. "You've been here before." Those words played in a loop, like an echo she couldn't silence. She told herself it wasn't real, that she was just tired, that stress and loneliness could make the mind invent anything. But there was a part of her, the part that still believed in the things we can't explain, that wasn't so sure. By afternoon, Evelyn found herself at the city library. She hadn't planned it. Her feet just brought her there. The building smelled of old paper and dust, the scent of forgotten stories. The librarian, a gentle woman in her 60s, looked up as Evelyn approached the desk. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone," Evelyn said softly. "Or maybe two people. I'm not even sure where to start." The woman smiled kindly. "You'd be surprised what people find here. Names, birth records, newspaper clippings, sometimes even love letters." Evelyn hesitated. "Yes. Love letters." She gave the names, James Holloway and Clara Whitmore. Both from around the 1940s. The librarian tilted her head, thoughtful. "Those names sound familiar. Let me check the archives." She disappeared into the back room. Evelyn waited, fingers tracing the edge of the counter. Her heart was beating too fast. She didn't know what she wanted, proof that they'd existed, or proof that they hadn't. When the librarian returned, she carried a thin folder, yellowed with age. "You might find this interesting," she said. "It's from the local newspaper, 1944. Evelyn opened the folder. Inside was a single clipping, an old article. The ink slightly faded but still legible. "Local woman mourns fiancé lost at sea, James Holloway among missing soldiers." Her throat tightened as she read. The article mentioned that James Holloway's ship had disappeared in the Atlantic during a storm. Among those waiting for news was his fiancée, Clara Whitmore of Boston, who continued to visit the docks every evening, long after hope had faded. There was a photograph, blurred, small, but unmistakable. A woman standing by the water, holding a letter. Evelyn's breath caught. The woman in the photo looked like her. Not perfectly, the hair was shorter, the dress different, but the shape of the face, the tilt of the chin, even the way she stood, it was her. For a moment, the room tilted. The walls felt like they were shifting away from her. The librarian's voice came faintly through the fog. "Are you all right, dear?" Evelyn blinked hard. "Yes, it's nothing." She forced a smile. Could I make a copy of this? Of course. Evelyn held the copy close as she left the library. Her fingers shook slightly as she folded the paper and slipped it into her bag. Outside, the sky was pale again, almost white. Clouds were gathering far in the distance. She walked aimlessly through the streets, her thoughts a blur of timelines, faces, and echoes. Every step she took, she could almost feel another set of footsteps behind hers, not chasing her, not threatening her, just walking with her. That night, the wind returned. It came softly at first, whispering through the cracks in the window frame like a voice testing its own strength. Evelyn sat in bed, the newspaper clipping beside her, the letters in their box across the room. She tried reading a book, listening to music, anything to drown out the silence. But every sound seemed to bend, to curve toward that single quiet space in her mind where James's voice still lived. When the first drop of rain hit the window, her eyes lifted. It was beginning again. The whisper came with the rain, low and uncertain, almost as if it, too, were afraid. Evelyn. Her chest tightened. She whispered back before she could stop herself. James? A pause. Then, you found her. Her pulse jumped. Clara? She didn't forget. The words felt heavy, weighted with something she couldn't name. Who was she, really? Evelyn asked. What happened to her? Silence. Then faint, almost broken. She waited, until the sea stopped calling. Evelyn closed her eyes. She could see it, the docks, the gray waves. The woman in the photograph standing alone with the letter pressed to her heart. Did she ever see you again? No answer. Only the sound of rain deepening, steady and sad. Then, one last whisper, soft. So soft it was barely a sound at all. She still can. Evelyn's breath trembled. The candle by her bedside flickered violently. The air grew colder, but her body felt warm, almost feverish, like a memory waking inside her skin. She turned toward the wall where the letters had been hidden. The plaster was smooth now, painted over. But she could feel it pulsing faintly beneath her fingertips, like the beat of a heart. And in that moment, she knew. The story wasn't over. It wasn't a haunting. It was a conversation. Between two souls who had lost each other once and weren't ready to say goodbye again. Chapter 5. The Dream That Crossed Time. The first night after the whisper, Evelyn dreamed of water. It wasn't the usual kind of dream, the half-light nonsense of a tired brain. This one began with the taste of salt. The rain had stopped, yet she could hear it somewhere falling on a roof that didn't belong to her world. She was standing on a pier. Fog drifted low over the harbor, thick as smoke. The wood beneath her feet was slick, and when she looked down, she saw letters carved into it. J+C, 1942. Her pulse quickened. She knew this pier. She had seen it in her mind when she read James's letters. But now the air smelled of coal and seaweed and the faint perfume of another life. Behind her, a voice said quietly, "You came back." She turned and saw him. James Holloway, not the faint shimmer she'd glimpsed in her apartment, not the whisper in the wall. A man, solid and alive, wearing a navy uniform damp with rain. His eyes were the gray of the Atlantic. For a heartbeat, she forgot who she was. The pier, the rain, the year, all of it felt natural, inevitable. "James?" she breathed. He smiled, weary but warm. "You found the letters?" "I did." "Then you know how it ends." Lightning cracked somewhere beyond the fog, illuminating his face. For a moment, it was Michael's face, her ex-lover's. Then the fog folded back over him, and it was James again, watching her with sorrow too old for one lifetime. "You shouldn't have crossed over," he said. "It wakes the echoes." The word echoes trembled through the air, and the pier shuddered beneath her feet. The water below turned dark, swirling not like waves, but like ink. Faces moved inside it, pale and silent, mouthing words she couldn't hear. Evelyn backed away. "This isn't real." "It's as real as memory," he said softly. "And memory never dies." She stumbled, And suddenly the scene flickered. The pier became her bedroom, rain hammering against the window. She stood barefoot on the floorboards, heart racing. The sheets twisted around her legs. But something was wrong. The furniture wasn't hers. The wallpaper was gone. In its place hung a framed photograph of James in uniform, smiling beside a woman who looked exactly like her, only older, softer, wearing 1,940 curls. Clara. Evelyn's reflection stared back at her from the glass, and for a moment both faces overlapped, hers and Clara's, until she couldn't tell which belonged to her. The whisper returned, close and breathy. "Don't forget me." She turned. The apartment dissolved again, and she was standing inside a small house by the sea. Rain lashed against the windows. Her hands were writing a letter. "My dearest James, they say the sea has claimed you, but I still feel you in the rain. Sometimes I think I hear you call my name. Sometimes I answer." The ink trembled under her pen. Evelyn tried to stop, to pull her own body back, but the dream had taken control. She felt Clara's grief, her lungs tight from crying, her heart a heavy stone. The door burst open. Wind rushed in, scattering the pages. A figure stood in the doorway, just shadow and rain. "Clara!" the figure shouted. "Clara!" "Wait!" Clara ran forward, but the world broke apart. The rain became whispering voices, the floor became water, and she was falling through it, sinking through decades of silence. She woke, gasping. Her pillow was damp, not with sweat, but with seawater. The letters lay open on the floor, though she hadn't touched them. One fluttered against the air vent, and she saw that a new line had appeared at the bottom, written in ink still wet. "I saw you in my dream tonight. You were me." Evelyn pressed her hand to her mouth. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She glanced toward the window. Outside, the streetlight flickered, and for an instant, she saw the outline of a woman standing there in the rain, looking up at her apartment window. "Clara." The woman raised her hand slowly, palm against the glass from the outside, though the window was on the third floor. Evelyn whispered, trembling. "What do you want from me?" The voice came not from the woman, but from inside her head, James's voice and her own overlapping like two recordings out of sync. "To remember. To finish what we began." The figure outside dissolved with the next flash of lightning. The whisper faded. Only Evelyn's reflection remained, her eyes wide, her face pale, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. She sank to the floor, clutching the letter, the ink smearing across her fingertips. She could no longer tell if she had dreamed it, or if she had crossed into something that wasn't supposed to be touched. But somewhere, deep inside, she understood. Clara's silence wasn't emptiness. It was waiting. And now, Evelyn had answered. Chapter 6. The Last Letter. The world had grown quieter after that night. Days slipped past in soft gray tones, rain, then pale sunlight, then rain again. Evelyn no longer knew how much time had passed. The apartment felt suspended, like an echo that refused to end. She hadn't dreamed since that night. But the silence was almost worse. It hummed beneath everything: the kettle's whistle, the elevator's sigh, even her heartbeat. The silence waited, and every evening, as the light faded and the shadows lengthened, she felt the same faint pull toward the wall where she'd first heard his voice. On the 5th day, she found it. The letter wasn't in the box this time. It had been slipped under her door, folded neatly in half, sealed with red wax. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. The paper was rough, yellowed with age, the ink uneven as though written by candlelight. At the top, in delicate handwriting, "To whoever remembers." She sat down, the letter shaking between her fingers, and began to read. "If you are reading this, it means the story has found you again. Every generation, it searches for a voice, someone who still believes in love that doesn't end with death. Someone who can hear the rain and know it isn't just weather." Evelyn swallowed hard. "I am Clara Whitmore. I wrote to James for 3 years after his ship vanished." Each letter was a prayer, a refusal to let time erase him. "On the night I died, I left one final letter hidden behind the wall of this house. A letter not for him, but for the one who would come after. I dreamed of her. I dreamed of you. Her breath caught. They said grief fades. It doesn't. It changes shape. It becomes stories, dreams, whispers that wait for someone who can listen. You are listening now, aren't you? The ink blurred where tears had once fallen. He's still waiting by the sea, and I can't reach him, but maybe you can. Evelyn lowered the paper, blinking through tears that had gathered without warning. The air felt charged again, that same quiet electricity she'd felt the first time she'd opened the box. James, she whispered. Are you still here? The room didn't answer, but the rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, steady, rhythmic, almost like footsteps. She rose slowly and walked toward the window. Outside, the city was wrapped in mist. The streetlights blurred like candles behind glass. For a moment she thought she saw him there, standing across the street, coat dark with rain, face tilted upward as if listening. James. She ran to the door, down the stairs, out into the storm, the cold cutting through her, the rain stinging her skin. But when she reached the street, there was no one there, only the reflection of the lights in the puddles and the echo of her own breathing. And then a voice behind her. Evelyn. She turned. He stood beneath the streetlight, exactly as she had seen him in her dreams, the same gray eyes, the same faint smile. The rain didn't seem to touch him. Her heart broke and healed all at once. I found the last letter. He nodded. You were always meant to. Why me? She asked. Why now? Because you listened. Because you believed. His voice was quiet, tender. Clara couldn't let go. Neither could I. So the story stayed, waiting for someone who could finish it. Evelyn stepped closer. Finish it how? He looked at her for a long moment. By remembering. By forgiving us for never saying goodbye. Tears blurred her vision. You loved her so much. I still do. He smiled faintly. But love isn't about holding on. It's about setting each other free. The rain softened. The street grew still. Clara's waiting, he said. And I can't find her without you. She felt warmth on her shoulder, his hand, light as air. And suddenly the world shifted again, the street dissolving into the gray-blue glow of the sea. They stood on the pier from her dreams. The water was calm now. The fog had lifted. A woman waited at the end of the pier, dressed in white, her hair moving softly in the wind. Clara. When she turned, Evelyn saw her own face reflected in that timeless gaze, the echo of herself across decades. Thank you, Clara whispered, for listening. Evelyn wanted to speak, but no sound came. Instead, she reached out one hand to James, one to Clara, and for a moment, the three of them stood together in a circle of quiet light. The sea breathed. The wind sighed. Then James and Clara began to fade, hand in hand, walking toward the horizon until the mist swallowed them both. Evelyn watched until the last shimmer of light dissolved into the water. When she opened her eyes again, she was standing in her apartment, the letter still in her hands. But the air felt lighter. The silence was gone. She walked to the window. The storm had ended. The sky was pale, the kind of blue that comes just before dawn. For the first time since moving in, she felt peace. Not absence peace. She unfolded the letter one last time. At the bottom, new words had appeared in the same faded ink. It's done. Thank you for remembering. She smiled through her tears and whispered, Goodbye. The whisper that answered was soft, loving, and final. Goodbye, Evelyn. Epilogue. Weeks later, the apartment was empty. Evelyn had moved on, leaving the letters sealed once more inside the wall where she'd found them. The new tenant, a young writer, arrived on a rainy evening. He paused as he closed the door, listening to the gentle tapping of the storm against the window. For a moment, he thought he heard a voice in the rain, soft, melodic, almost like someone whispering a name. He smiled to himself. Old buildings, he murmured. They keep secrets. Then he set down his suitcase and turned on the light. Outside, the rain kept falling steady, tender, eternal, and somewhere within it, two voices whispered. Together at last. We remember. End of Whispers of Love. If loved my story, don't forget to subscribe.